because nothing good or nothing productive, nothing valuable ever happens after 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And you know what? This spoke to me on such a level. I was like, this is so true.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another Friday coffee chat here with us. We are sitting here having some herbal tea, which has become our personality, our new personality.
Because it feels like a warm hug, like a
Yeah.
nice cozy blanket, and sometimes it's everything you need.
I feel like you
for
can
your
never
soul,
go
you know?
wrong. I actually love herbal iced tea.
Yeah,
I know some people are like, ugh, but that's bitter. No, it's good. You don't know what's good.
I feel like unless you've grown up, I feel with herbal tea, maybe you don't like it as much.
You know what I figured out the other day? That people associate tea with being sick.
Yes, so many.
And I don't.
So many.
Like, for me, and like in my culture, drinking tea is something you do every day. You don't go out for a coffee. You go to like each other's places for some tea, you know? And this is also what you say, like, oh, come over for some tea, you know?
It's so interesting.
And it's
I
not
don't
only
know
tea,
that.
it's tea and cake, always.
Always some sweet, always something to eat.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah. But tea is like a daily routine.
So
almost.
not coffee,
No,
because I know coffee. So yeah,
it's tea. And like it's
For us,
this
it's more
black
coffee.
tea that like if you leave it for too long, it makes like this, you know, almost like this film on top.
yes.
That is like, you know, you can really tell that that is like black tea.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
pure.
Yeah, exactly. So
So
like that is just,
interesting.
and then I just found out, you know, like people actually associate with just being sick, and especially like herbal tea, they just drink it when
Like
they're sick.
chamomile.
Yeah, chamomile or peppermint, and I'm like, I do that every day. What do you mean?
Yeah.
You know,
Oh well, everyone's different.
just like
Yes.
a funny thing. I don't know. I always thought that that's something that everybody does, but yeah. How are you, Eleni?
I'm good. You know what? I came across something interesting, and I wanted to run it by you. And like 100%, there's going to be some sort of like content on this as well on our
Okay.
socials. But here's the thing.
Okay.
No, I'm sharing this because I felt very inspired this morning
Tell me.
when I saw it. Right. So basically, I read it. I don't know where it was, and I'm probably like butchering it half, but it was super inspiring because basically it was like, you know, it was saying that when you feel like you don't know what to focus on, you don't know what to prioritize in your life, start with prioritizing yourself and focusing on yourself.
Boom.
Yes. And I found it, I don't know, I just found it so inspiring. Like, I don't know, I read it this morning and I was like, yeah, I like that. But I have to say, what I found interesting was that the focus was like, oh, when you don't know what else to do, focus on yourself. And I'm like, yes, it's super inspiring, but at the same time, it's like you should always focus on yourself first,
Yeah.
because then everything else will fall into place.
Yeah,
Like, don't
exactly.
wait until you have nothing else to do
Exactly.
to focus on yourself. I just want to drop it, see like, you know, what your opinion is on that, because
No,
it's
I
like super
agree.
inspiring, but I'm also like, but isn't this a little bit also the problem in the whole thing, where it's like, this is seen as last, but actually this
Yeah.
is the core of everything.
I feel like in general, you know, when people are kind of lost or
Yeah.
stuck, the first thing that, and it's almost like a bias, right? It's like you attribute, you know, your failures to the environment. So you're trying to fix that. Maybe you don't have a good enough car, you don't have a good enough place, you don't have a good enough, I don't know, you know, closet or wardrobe, you know, like you just don't like what is there, you don't have a good enough job, you don't have good enough friends, even though that's more rare, but sometimes it happens too, when like people are like, yeah, my friends are actually not my friends. But I feel like a lot of the times we forget to look inwards, basically, you know,
like, what is going on
and
there?
instead of fixing everything around us, just kind of looking inwards and being like, what do I need?
Yeah.
you know?
And that is the first step, isn't it?
Exactly.
So I found that
Yeah.
very interesting of like putting it again. It was inspiring, but it also made me think of what are
Yeah.
we missing actually, and what maybe also in terms of social media and whoever is talking about these topics.
And I actually want to
are
take
we
it a
missing
step
there?
further there, because a lot of the times, like I also noticed with social media and people criticizing putting yourself first, I've gotten some content on that, you know, and I was like, this is interesting, but I'm gonna watch it.
Like in what way?
Like that, you know, oh yeah, you know, everybody's telling you to put yourself first, but not everybody can do that. And I was like, okay, somebody has another opinion that I have. I want to listen to their arguments and like see if maybe they have a point, because a lot of the times I feel like, you know, we are kind of stuck in our own bubble of content that kind of just reinforces what we believe.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then I hear that and I got a bit like, I noticed like inside of me, I got a bit like, I don't like that.
Okay, but like, so what were the main points?
That was basically, you know, it was cultural mostly. That,
okay.
you know, prioritizing yourself first is a very individualistic thing. That you
is
kind of
fair.
have that mostly talked about and is very emphasized in individualistic cultures, you know, like Northern European, you know, Northern American, basically, you know, these cultures. But a lot of people actually live under collectivistic cultures or cultures where, you know, it is not the norm to put yourself first.
Yeah.
So then how do you do that? But here I do have a counter argument. And I feel like it's not necessarily about this selfishness, because what this person argued is that putting yourself first makes you selfish, you know? This is where I had problems.
I also feel like this is sometimes though what maybe it's not as talked about, but this is how I feel like this is also happening here.
Yeah.
And where it's like you feel guilty to put yourself first because you
Exactly.
think you're being selfish.
Exactly. So this is where I was a bit like, but it's not about being selfish, because you cannot give anything to anyone else if you don't listen to yourself first. You cannot be a good, you know, like worker, you know, a good employee. You cannot be a good partner. You cannot be a good friend, because you're going to let all of these inner things that you need to like focus on, kind of, you're going to project them onto every role that you have. And all of the unfulfilled needs that you didn't pay attention to, they will be projected in all of these roles. And, you know, like, and I just remember, you know, like, you know, when you were in planes and, you know, when the flight attendants tell you, put your own mask first because you help somebody before you help somebody else. I was like, this is essentially the point, you know? It's literally a survival thing, you know? Like, come on, you know? But I feel like it's, a lot of people perceive it as selfishness. They perceive it like, oh yeah, but I can't do it, you know? And I was just, yeah, but like there's no absolute terms on this, you know?
You know what? It's interesting because I do think that we all live in a context and the contexts are different. And with that, happiness looks different.
Yeah.
How the environment will react to you, how society will react to you for certain different things is different.
Exactly.
And I think it kind of goes back to, you know what, when it comes to well-being and happiness and finding your way to achieving that, you have to consider who you are, what your needs are, and the context that you live in.
Yeah. For sure.
It looks different for everyone.
Sure. And sure, sometimes, and I noticed that even like on my own self, sometimes people will judge you for putting yourself first, or they won't get it, you know? But at the same time, what I also noticed is when you do that, then you can also approach the relationship you have with another person in a much healthier way, a much more functional, and you can actually see how that relationship is improving because you took the time to put yourself first. And maybe the other person doesn't necessarily realize it, and maybe they don't realize that the result of our relationship being better is because I put myself first and I understood my needs first, you know? But that doesn't matter, because in the end the outcome is so nice, you know, and so satisfying in general. Anyway, are we overthinking this? I don't know.
Maybe we will find out after this coffee chat, because Today, this is what we want to talk about. We want to talk about how to stop overthinking.
I feel like this is the definition of a whole generation.
Yes.
Like, if you ask me, I feel
Yes.
like, you know, like late millennials, early Gen Zs, overthinking is the definition
Yes.
of this generation.
We spend so much time doing it.
In
so
our
much
heads,
time
in our
doing it, and
heads.
it's so difficult to stop. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to stop overthinking? It almost feels like, you know, when I say, oh, don't think about a pink elephant or whatever, all you can think of is a pink elephant.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I feel like it's the same when you tell yourself, okay, I need to stop overthinking this now. You know, it almost seems like you overthink the overthinking.
Yeah.
And it's just a spiral. But it takes away energy. It takes away our time. It takes away our energy. And it's like, how can we
yeah.
get out of this spiral almost?
And it also, like, if you think about it, overthinking just perpetuates the cycle of self-defeating behavior. Because we're all like born with certain like insecurities, you know, we acquire them over, you know, our lifespan, especially when we grow up, you know. There's a lot of stuff that we're maybe not confident about, and overthinking it actually perpetuates us staying in the same place and not growing out of it, like not overcoming our insecurities, not becoming more confident in who we are. And it's just self-sabotage at the end of the day, right?
It is. It is. And at the same time, if we think about where overthinking is coming from, it actually roots in a very adaptive behavior.
Yeah.
Because it's supposed to to keep us safe. It's supposed to keep us prepared. Because when do we overthink? When do we overthink? It's when we feel insecure or unsure about something. So this oftentimes happens in ambiguous situations where you're like, what exactly does this mean, right?
Yeah.
What is going on here? And then we start thinking, oh, it could be this, or it could be that, or, you know, we go through all these different scenarios. And if you think about it, it's there to provide us with clarity.
Yeah.
And with clarity comes, you know, we know what to do next. We know what to expect. We know how to keep ourselves safe in you know, every meaning of the word
Yeah.
really, right? It can, keeping us safe can also mean, I don't know, meeting a deadline, which, you know, it shouldn't feel like, you know, a safety or unsafe thing, but this is how we think. It you know,
Yeah.
we're trying to do our best and be prepared,
Exactly.
but
yeah, I feel like, you know, with like the
And this-
overthinking and like the root of overthinking in general is our ability to try to guess and predict the environment. So kind of like, you know, understand what is happening and understand how we can cope with whatever is happening in that sense, you know. And it can be applied honestly in anything, like even in relationships. I feel like sometimes, you know, it's like, but what did they mean with that, you know?
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about a million interpretations of like what they meant with a certain phrase, you know, and then you like wrap your head around that.
But here's the issue with this, right? And I think this is why we are experiencing overthinking oftentimes not as something positive, but as something that drains us. And it is because even though overthinking is a very adaptive behavior for ambiguous situations, we oftentimes apply to situations that are actually not ambiguous. But for some reason, we perceive them as ambiguous. And that is when we start overthinking situations that we really shouldn't worry about.
Yeah.
There's no reason to overthink. And this is where it becomes problematic and it becomes draining.
And the reason why we start overthinking situations that shouldn't even be overthinked is coming from our fears, mostly. From our fear of failure, from perfectionism, from various insecurities that we have. They're basically telling us more about ourselves than about the situation itself.
That is so
right?
true. Like, honestly, one example that comes to my mind is, you know, for example, you've done something. For example, you have presented something or you have finished a project, whatever it is. Imagine your supervisor doesn't tell you you've done a great job or great presentation. This went very well. And oftentimes when we don't have this very explicit and direct positive feedback, sometimes we tend to interpret this as, oh, but was it good?
Yeah.
Did I do something wrong? And this is where an unambiguous situation, we make it ambiguous.
Yeah.
And oftentimes
Yeah.
it roots in insecurity and in perfectionism.
Need for validation as well.
And need for validation, exactly. But it flips so quickly where, if there was no bad feedback, there's no reason to assume that something went wrong.
Yeah.
But oftentimes just the lack of something positive is almost stronger than like the lack of something negative.
Is this negative bias almost, right?
Yeah.
That like the lack of positive information means that something has gone wrong and we start overthinking it. But I think you said something that is actually key to understanding overthinking, which is the fact that it happens so fast. We sometimes don't even catch ourselves overthinking,
so
and we don't even realize, wait a minute, am I overthinking this?
Yeah.
Or is this legit, And I feel like that is key to also overcoming overthinking, because once you actually catch yourself in the moment, wait a minute, what is happening? Is this for real? Like, am I overdoing it? Am I basically self-sabotaging myself just because there's an ambiguous situation and I want to interpret it, but there are only so many ways that I can interpret it, So basically in this episode, we want to take you through the process of overthinking and kind of how to get out of it.
Exactly. How to stop overthinking.
And how to stop
difficult
it.
task.
Yeah. Because a lot of the times we don't really realize that what gets us into overthinking is also what gets us out of overthinking. And we're going to go into that step by step. So the first thing that you need to do when you deal with overthinking, or when you want to deal with overthinking, is to catch yourself in the moment. And awareness of overthinking is probably like key to the next steps that follow.
You need to know when it is happening so that you can figure out why it is happening and then figure out how to stop make it happening, basically. But oftentimes, as we said, it's very automatic. It's not something you decide to do. It's not like you sit down, you're like, now it's time to overthink, right? It just happens, and it almost feels like sometimes like it's impossible to control. So really just becoming aware of these moments where you are overthinking in the moment can be very powerful to take the first step to stop overthinking.
And there are various triggers, I think, that can kind of signal that that might be overthinking, actually. Like for me, that is when I think about a situation when I'm doing something else. Like for instance, I'm watching a series or a movie and my mind drifts off and continues like, I don't know, going into the same scenario over and over and over and over again without...
Where you don't focus on what you're actually doing.
Exactly.
In the
And then I'm
moment.
like, I'm watching a movie. Like I'm not... What?
Yeah.
So this is for me the sign that I know, like, okay, my thoughts are interfering with the present moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not like about, planning, but it is really about ruminating continuously about a bad scenario, or like doubting yourself about a specific decision.
Yeah.
But doing that while I'm doing something else that I should actually be into.
That's your like clear tell sign that I'm overthinking and I need to stop right now.
Exactly. Yeah. What is it for you?
For me, honestly, it is when I can tell that my thoughts are going like 1,000 miles an hour.
Speed.
Like the speed of thought, and almost where I feel like I cannot stop. Right? So there's like a lack of control over my thoughts. And of course, like thoughts, I mean, it's a whole other discussion. Can we control our thoughts? To what extent can we control our thoughts? Because, they just like kind of randomly pop up sometimes, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole different conversation. But if I get that feeling of like, it's just going like, it's like, it's just going through my mind, and it's like thoughts quickly and about the same topic, and where I feel stress as well. So it's also a physical like experience where or feeling where I'm like, oh, I feel stressed by this. Like I'm
Yeah.
not relaxed. I'm very tense.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what is happening. And again, as you said, it's like the same thing over and over and over. Or so this is for me. This is when I know, okay, this is this is not problem solving anymore. This is overthinking,
Yeah.
and this needs to be stopped right now.
Yeah, I feel like it's also, it kind of can also go into problem sleeping, for instance, when you like start overthinking things right before bed, because
Oh my God,
this
yes.
is when you're supposed to calm down, but your mind is like, let's start thinking about everything. And you know what I noticed? Because I'm wearing like this fitness watch.
Yeah.
I have higher heart rate variability, or lower, I think. Is it lower or higher? I forgot. Anyway, it's worse. Like, I don't know if higher or lower is worse, but it's worse when I start overthinking before bed. I wake up in the morning.
That's the worst.
I log my sleep,
Yeah.
and I can see that something was wrong. And then I catch myself like, what happened in the last 3 nights that it's so bad? And then I realized it was my rumination.
It was overthinking.
Yeah.
Honestly. The amount of hours I have lost, like of hours of sleep that I have lost by overthinking and just getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night because I was overthinking is actually not funny. But also,
and then your brain can't stop, and you wake up in the middle of the night, you're still thinking about the same thing.
yes, it's like ever present. It's like it never goes away. But also I read this so I saw this one story by someone who I follow, and he was writing, you know what, it's like 10 p.m. I'm going to sleep. I'm not even gonna try to stay up late, because nothing good or nothing productive, nothing valuable ever happens after 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And you know what, this spoke to me on such a level. I was
Yeah.
like, this is so true. Like, sure, you're hanging out with people, you're hanging out with friends, you can get later, blah, blah, blah. In summer, I love staying up late, all of that. But the reality is, if you have nothing else to do, just sleep. Or you're going to start overthinking.
Yeah, exactly. Just go
And
to
that just
bed.
really spoke to me. But yeah, these are just like a few signs that can signal you that you are overthinking. And when you notice it in this moment, it can be very powerful, because then you have, the chance to actually stop and become aware of your overthinking.
Yeah, but what happens after you become aware? Because I feel like this is where, like, okay, so what do I do with it now?
That's the second step.
That is the second step. And here, what we'd like you to think about, and what also has helped us deal with overthinking, because I feel like everybody has that once in a while, and nobody's perfect to the extent where they don't overthink anything.
I wonder whether this exists actually.
I don't know. You really have to be super zen for that. I don't know. Maybe it exists, but I haven't met one single person who hasn't like overthinked anything in their entire life.
Never ever.
But actually, the second step is to think about, what would you have liked the situation to play out? Like, in what way would you have liked the situation that is bothering you, that you're overthinking? What would have been the best case scenario that would have made you, let's say, satisfied and would not have made you overthink it, let's say?
Yeah, because again, the root cause of overthinking is because something went differently to what you hoped.
Yeah.
And it's
or you don't even understand
Yeah.
what it was about. But then you can create your best case scenario in your head. And that can also help you understand, what is it that you needed to happen from that situation. And then you can also identify your need. I mean, for instance, like, if I overthink, let's say, a project at work, and there's a deadline, and I don't know if I will manage because there's also so many other things that I need to take care of. And there's also this other project that runs in parallel, and I don't know if I'm going to manage and how I'm going to, make sure that I plan everything and that I manage everything within a specific time period. Then I realized that the best way this could play out is if I had a plan, if I had resources, if everybody that was on board with those projects gave me feedback on time for those projects to happen before the deadline. like that would have been the best case scenario, right? And what I derived from that scenario is the fact that I actually need to be heard. I need other people to actually listen to me, to listen to what I need, to listen to my needs. And I also needed clarity in the sense of, is this possible to be achieved by that deadline or is it not? Clarity of whether it's in my control or not. Yeah. And that was an insight.
That is such an insight. And also, this is the difference to overthinking, right? Overthinking doesn't really help you in the end. It doesn't provide a solution most of the times, right? There's problem solving in the sense of, okay, I think things through and I'm trying to find a solution and I'm trying to solve a problem. But overthinking is just, it doesn't help you. But when you start analyzing it like that, when you start thinking about, okay, why have I felt like this? What is it that I actually need? What has bothered me? What makes me overthink it? Then you can actually start problem solving on that and finding a solution.
And then you don't focus so much on solving the situation, but the problem solving then is focused on fulfilling your need.
It's a lot deeper, right, than just the situation.
It's such a mind, I don't know, it's a mind switch almost, where you realize I don't have to fix the situation. I have to understand my need and fulfill that. It's different.
Yes, and I would also say then the question is, what of this lies actually within my control?
Yes.
Because a lot of overthinking, I notice, happens around things that are outside of our control. You can't change another person. You can't change the past. So what is it that is actually within your control and where you can focus your energy on and your time on? And what do you maybe just have to accept and let go and see how you can make sure that you can behave or think or act in a way next time something similar happens so that you feel better, so you don't go into this overthinking spiral.
Yeah, it's basically learning from it, right? Mm-hmm. You learn more about yourself. And again, I feel like it actually ties very well to what we started the conversation about, that you actually prioritize yourself. And when you actually think about your own needs and you understand, okay, but what need was not fulfilled in this situation, it's so much easier to then resolve a situation because you're much more aware and you have much more insight into how to fulfill that need, whether it's within that situation or within a completely different situation,
Yeah, because chances are, because it lies deeper than just in the situation itself, it's going to happen again. Definitely. Sooner or later, a similar situation is going to come up again. All right, so we have talked about how can you catch yourself while you're overthinking and how you can use this moment to basically reflect on, okay, why have I been overthinking and what lies, as a root cause of my overthinking in that moment? What do I need? And this is all great, but we also want to give you some actionable steps on what you can do with it. So really just very specific things that you can do when you catch yourself overthinking to really ensure that you're not just catching yourself and kind of thinking about it and reflecting about it, but actually, do certain things that will help you to, set yourself up for success in the long term and help you reduce your overthinking when it is not necessary in the long term.
I feel like the first one, that has helped me a lot is to just write down my thought process. Actually, even if I have 5 minutes to do so, it doesn't matter. The point is I can even do it on my notes app or in the balance formula. You just go in there and you just put down whatever is in your head and whatever you're worried about. And I can even say stuff that doesn't even make sense.
So kind of do a brain dump of your overthinking.
Exactly. For instance, oh yeah, it's a stupid example, but I want to make an omelet tomorrow morning, but I'm afraid I won't find any eggs at the supermarket. Mm-hmm. Sure, that is a bit stupid, but sometimes you even what you're worrying about can sound stupid, but it is still legit because it affects you. And what I do usually is I dump everything on paper. I take a step back. I leave it there somewhere. I come back after 30 minutes or so, or like after I've calmed down, and I have, identified my need and I've fulfilled it. I come back and I read that and I'm like, lol. Not only is that a bit cringe, but it is also completely unrealistic. you know? So
like the worries that you had.
Exactly.
And stuff
So
like that.
it literally just shows you there is sometimes nothing to worry about, and sometimes it's all in your head. And just having this reality check is very valuable, because you do really realize that sometimes we can create problems where there aren't, just by overthinking them.
But I would also say that sometimes, when there is a good, I don't want to say good reason to worry, but there's just sometimes things that need to happen and they occupy a lot of real estate in your mind.
Yeah.
And lead you to overthinking. And with things that are within your control, it just helps to make a plan. This is the one thing that helps me so much, where it's like, when I know, okay, I need to do this and I need to do that, and then I'm like, oh, but I need to do that and the other thing as well on the same day. How am I gonna manage everything in one day, for example, right? Just sitting down and writing a little schedule and a little plan of like, I've written down everything, so I don't need to worry about this. It's on paper. I will not forget it. And then also just think about how to structure my day so I can manage everything, for example. That helps me so much.
Yeah.
And then I can sleep like a baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes the biggest difference.
You get closure. I think you get closure.
Yes.
And like we've talked about this in the beginning, right? You get clarity, because that's why you overthink in the first place. And making this plan is what is going to give you clarity, right? And at least give you clarity of what is in your control in a specific situation.
Yeah, and also the sense of security, almost, or like safety, of like, I will not forget it.
Yeah.
And I know what I have to do first and what I have to do second, and I will manage.
Exactly. Another actionable step that is actually super helpful when you start overthinking is to just act.
Just do.
Just do. Sometimes, not in all situations, but sometimes acting before thinking can actually help, especially if you're somebody who is prone to overthinking every little step and every little action.
Yes. And for example, there are moments where it's better to, take a moment, wait, and then reply, whatever that is. But, things such as working out, for example, if you struggle, I'm talking about myself here, right? Because this has helped me a lot. If you struggle, for example, to work out regularly, it's like this thing of like, if I allow myself to think about it for too long, I will not get up from this couch.
Yeah.
I will be thinking, getting up now and getting ready and going outside, and it's kind of cold, and then I have to walk for like 30 minutes, and then this and this. You start overthinking and you will not do it.
So you kind of like overthink the excuses that would keep you from getting to your goal.
It gets you spend time telling yourself all the reasons why you shouldn't be doing something, and then you will not do it. Whereas what helps, and it just sounds so simple and like, I don't know, almost like too simple, but sometimes it just helps to say, okay, it's 3:00. I have this class booked for 3:30. I'm getting up, I'm gonna put my things on, and then I'm leaving. And not allowing yourself to start thinking about it too much. And I would say this is with a lot of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you start allowing thoughts coming in, and if you give them the time and the space of like, but like, it sounds like an interesting opportunity, but maybe I'm not qualified enough, maybe I'm not competent enough, but what if I don't like the people, but what if this, but what if that? You have given your doubts a lot of space
and importance
to actually be effective in a way of like, it's gonna keep you.
Yeah.
And like putting yourself out of the comfort zone can just help you to just skip the whole overthinking and just do it, and you will find out you'll be fine. It will be great anyway.
This is actually something that I found out with a lot of the stuff that I was overthinking. Like just doing sometimes, like just closing your eyes, and even if you're like, fighting for your life to not overthink, and you just do it, it helps so much, because afterwards you see how great the effects are of you actually doing the thing and not overthinking it.
Yeah.
And you only
feel
realize that after the fact.
You also feel so proud.
Yeah.
And it's just like a great feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
But I would also say, sometimes things happen. Maybe some situations that make us feel bad. Maybe you received some negative feedback. Maybe you, I don't know, made a mistake, or maybe just something didn't go the way you wanted. And oftentimes it's a bit difficult to deal with these ones. And honestly, personally, for me, it just helps to kind of almost take a bird's eye view and distance myself a little bit and just think about, first of all, in the grand scheme of things, what just happened? Is it actually important? Is it actually gonna make a difference? Are you gonna worry about it in like a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now, or honestly, even 5 years from now? If it doesn't matter 5 years from now, why are you bashing yourself?
Yeah.
And sometimes it helps to get this distance, and it helps you calm down. It helps you be like, you know what? In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. We move on.
I think it's also a question of energy investment, because if you're somebody who's like very, let's say, thoughtful and intentional with where you put your energy, you realize that overthinking is not a good investment. It doesn't have good ROI. It just doesn't.
No, it's like negative.
Exactly. So you're basically just wasting resources that you could have put in something so much more valuable, on something that maybe you can't change, maybe you can't control, and maybe it doesn't even matter,
Yeah, and you know what? Also, I do truly believe that things happen for a reason. And sometimes having this trust and the faith of things are happening for a reason, and maybe something didn't go the way you wanted it to. And maybe this is because you were meant to learn something from it and to grow from it. And next time you'll know better. And next time maybe you will not make the same mistake, or you will know how to respond in a different way. There's so many things that we can learn from these more difficult situations, and focusing on that rather than on why did I do this? Why didn't it go the way I planned? And kind of make yourself feel worse. Instead of doing that, it's so much more productive, and it's so much better for us as humans to just see the positive of it and take from it what we can in a positive way. And let the negativity go.
Amen. For sure. So you guys, we hope that this episode has helped you look at overthinking in a different light, and has also helped you deal with a situation that maybe you're overthinking right now, but also help you see the needs that are behind overthinking, the needs that maybe you need to fulfill yourself, that are at the root of overthinking, but also the actionable steps that can take you out of the overthinking cycle whenever it happens. And if you've been enjoying this episode, you can support our Friday coffee chats by buying us a coffee. The link is in the episode description. And if you've loved this episode, be a good friend and send it to your overthinking bestie.
See you next week.
Bye.